September 21st, 2020. It might be a red letter day, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk about leadership. Monday morning, I heard the stocks are in decline. I'm well. I hope you're well. Some things happened over the weekend with some friends of mine, and it reminded me everything's fine. Everything came out good. But it reminded me about the importance of leadership and how important it is, but also how difficult it can be also. So I wanted to give a talk about my experiences while also celebrating 10 years ago, a great project, Civilization 5 came out. Just got off the horn with the lead designer, a guy I worked with on that project. I'm still good friends with a lot of people who are in critical leadership positions on this project. 10 years later, over I don't know, 20 million players, I would assume by now. It was 12.5 million 5 years ago, so no reason not to believe at practically $3 a copy, more people haven't played that game or experienced it, at least in the household. You know, a lot of kids will be playing the games that their fathers bought, or mothers bought for that matter. Why is leadership so important? Well, who wants to really do work? Right? If you don't have to do work, why would you do work? A good leader does a lot of things. A good leader will inspire you to work, will hold you accountable to get that work done if you say you're going to do it, and will also give you the resources you need to be successful and to direct those within his department or her department to leadership positions later down the road. Friends of mine know I talk about the military a lot, and I think the military is a great example of systems that have worked for a very long period of time. In the military, direct reports are a really big deal. They try to limit each position of leadership to only having 7 direct reports. So if I'm in charge of a platoon of people, I'm going to try, if that platoon's 40 people, one of my first tasks is going to be to delegate some of my responsibilities, at least checking in with individuals, down along the hierarchy. So how do you divide 40 by 7? And then you start promoting people to positions of leadership underneath your major leadership. So I don't have to be responsible for 40 people. I have to be responsible for 7 sergeants who are then responsible for 3 to 5 to 7 people each. I'm going to delegate them. I'm going to give them responsibility and hold them accountable when things go right or when things go wrong. But managing more than 7 people is just really difficult. Why? Well, if you have 8 hours to work in a day and you have 7 people, I have 1 hour with each of my 7 people, and then I have 1 hour to report to the person above me. Does that make sense? Good morning, Savannah, or afternoon, I should say. For me, it's still kind of the morning. Savannah says, hey, I can only hang out for a minute, but what's good? I'm talking about leadership. The thing about the hierarchy is, let me draw it out for you here. In the background, what do we have? We have some drawings that Tom did 10 years ago. We have a screenshot of Civilization 5 from 10 years ago. And dang, that still looks good. Civ 5 is still very playable today. Very playable. Civ 6 was too saccharine, too colorful for me, but art director Brian Bussati put on a Civ 5 color pack, and I find that a lot better, at least a little bit more for me. I like the Civ 5 art style. That color palette was mostly dictated by art director Dorian Newcomb, and a lot of input from also a former art director, Mike Bates, who's a great painter, who I have a couple of his pieces on the wall behind me. These prints over here were paintings that Mike Bates did. Great painter, Microsoft, a lot of the old gunship F-117, M1 tank platoon games from the 90s at Microprose and early 2000s. Civilization 5, that's the box art from the special edition, which is in my basement still with a couple pewter action figures. The hierarchy, let's go to a new, this is why I think the hierarchy is important and why this ties into politics a little bit, but why Western society, the hierarchy is important. The hierarchy is a method of enabling individuals within a balanced and supported structure. Think about a pyramid. Let's do a quick org chart that looks something like a pyramid. Well, a lot of people might say This is where I want to be someday. Well, why do you want to be up there? Well, maybe because you have the longest view. You can see the furthest around. But if this is a hierarchy, you have everyone underneath of here reporting to you. Now, this is too many direct reports. Let's say you got 40 people down there. The idea, if you're in charge, you need to break this hierarchy up in groups of 7. Let's just guesstimate this as groups of 7. And then you have, let's say 4. You know, why not? Let's have 4 people who are responsible for those people. And let's say you have someone between you that are responsible for those 2, maybe these 2, something like that. And they have some ancillaries that they report to somewhere else. And then those 2 people support you. So let's say one of the reasons that the pyramid is strong is because if something fails down here, it might take out this line, but the rest of the pyramid will stay strong. The idea that the buck stops at the top can knock off, this person can leave. Maybe you move, maybe you go somewhere else. Let's paint over that. Problem, 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 responsibility, responsibility. You can go down to a part of the pyramid that's still stable. Maybe this leader over here. This is still a stable structure. And then this whole structure can hire, hopefully in time, each of these people at the bottom can train up, become leaders, and then you give them places of responsibility. So you copy, paste this up, and then you can grow your pyramid higher by enabling people below you to take on more and more responsibility. And that's how everybody works up, everybody rises their own tide. You have to, not only is it responsibility, it's authority, it's all these decision-making processes. You have to reward that extra responsibility. But not only responsibility, loneliness. You have to reward the loneliness of it too. When you're on top of a pyramid, there's very few peers you can commiserate with. Something else the Army says is, don't gripe down, gripe up. You don't want to hurt the morale of the people underneath of you because you want to ultimately encourage them to take on more responsibility so that the entire organization can grow. Is this making a lot of sense? That's why training is so important. That's why mentorship is so important, because in order to grow, you have to support what's underneath of you. This has to be a respected relationship, both directions. It has to be respectful. It has to be polite in order for it to work and to grow. I think one of the big problems, let's just take an aside of this, I think one of the big problems in school today, in academia today, is a lack of respect between teachers and students and their families. I think one of the ways in the military you get respect is you physically beat people. I don't think you need to physically beat people, but you need to have respect. On one end, it comes to physically beating. Like if you don't respect your boss, you get whipped. In ancient Roman society, if a legion screws up, decimation. 1 in 10 members of that legion are killed, probably crucified. That's how it used to be done in the Dark Ages. Today, we know better than that. Everyone's valuable. They just might not be the right fit for your organization. Move them to a new organization. I listened to a great lecture by Richard Davis Hanson on generalship during World War II. I worry that a lot of the Zoomers are not getting the World War II history. You guys are calling the current government fascists. Whoever's calling the current government fascist does not really understand, in my humble opinion, what actual fascism actually is, what the stakes actually are. It's like calling a cup of coffee. This is hotter than the surface of the sun. This cup of coffee, this Red Bull, is so cold, it's like absolute zero. Well, there's like 400 degrees of difference between there and the sun. The sun's like 15,000 degrees Kelvin, and the coffee's like 140 degrees Kelvin. So like it's a gross thing. The reason you have to have the strong military is because actual World War is so devastating that no one wants to deal with it. It's worth any price not to engage in World War. Back to leadership. What's really important? Well, Eisenhower, when a division wasn't working right, it wasn't usually the men's fault. Usually you can move a new general from another division into that position and see if it fixes the respectful hierarchy. If you lose that respect between levels of your hierarchy, you probably should move the non-respecting element to a different division where that respect is going to be reestablished. 10 years ago, I think some of that type thing happened in my career. If you can't keep a respectful relationship, you either have to work on rebuilding that respect or move somewhere else where you can reestablish that respect. I think, look, Joe Rogan, I think, is an example of a talk show host who 99.9% of the time has high respect for his guests and his audience and lets people have their dialogue. He lets people talk and he tries to get why. Why does he give people respect? Well, he talks a lot about imagining everybody as a baby. Everybody was a baby once. Every baby has this hope and dream, and people have hopes and dreams and expect potential on this child, and we don't just turn the baby into fodder for another being. We try to grow that baby up into a useful piece of society. Leadership is respecting the people below you. It's respecting the people above you. Maybe not. Maybe you don't like them, but maybe they have a role that you don't fully understand, or maybe the people below you are very skilled and they have their own aspirations. Why are they so skilled? Understand what that is. Understand what the best and worst features are of your team, of the individual level, and encourage them or correct those behaviors. Working for my friend Dorian, he's very good at identifying people. How do you know what you're good at? How do you know what to do as a leader? Well, I think you have to experience a lot of things. I think you need to test yourself, just like uh, a runner has hurdles to jump over. Let's just make a little sketch of a stick figure character here who's running. Life, if this is time, you have these different hurdles. Some hurdles are bigger, some are smaller, some are further apart, some have like a water trap behind them, and some are just the same size but further and further down the road, and it's a test of your endurance. I think when you're young, it's very important to test yourself and to continually test yourself to know what you are best at. Maybe I want to try cooking. Can I cook? Am I good at this? Well, am I interested? Do I like the result? I don't know that you can find out what you are good or not good at naturally if you don't try everything. Be safe, of course, be safe, but I think generally doing is better than not. So once you've tried a lot of things and exposed yourself to a lot of things, then you can see all the members on your team. You can empathize a little bit more with them on what they can actually do. There's a great book I read called Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends and Influence People. There's a little bit about leadership in there, but really the important lesson of that book, and that book is as old as time. I mean, it might be like 100 years old at this point. The big takeaway for me from that book was genuinely have an interest in the people around you. Generally have an interest in the people around you. Now, I'm a very extroverted person. It's very easy for me to take an interest in the people around me. So that part of leadership is very natural. What isn't so natural, though, is being at the top of that pyramid where there's not a lot of other people around you. You have to make a hard decision. When you're back on top of that pyramid, you have to make judgment calls that affect everybody beneath of you. And some of those calls aren't going to be popular. So you have to have a little bit of gap. There's naturally going to be created a gap between you and the people underneath of you because not all your decisions are going to be popular, especially if your team doesn't understand you. Even if they do understand where you're coming from, they might not think it's popular. It's a good way to gain that popularity back by explaining your reasoning one-on-one with each of your employees. What's your philosophy? Having a driving philosophy, that's something you can point to, a doctrine you can point to and say, this is what I believe in. I want everyone to feel healthy. I want everyone to be well rested. I don't want to crunch. I want everyone to feel creative and important and have purpose. And I want to make a product that the customer enjoys and is a good value and is also educational for the customer. I want it to be wholesome. You come up with all these different phrases and measuring sticks for your own philosophy. What do you believe in? Do you want to be fit? Do you want to help other people be fit? Do you want to be intelligent? Do you want to raise the level of intelligence of conversations? Ryan's here. Thanks, Ryan, for chiming in. He says definitely getting some insights into some mid-level career concepts. Absolutely. Internships are very important for young artists who are in the game industry, teaching them some of those leadership and delegation skills as you go up and up and up and up and up. Delegation is so important. And it's not just making your life easier, it's training and giving opportunity to someone below you. So Savannah, who's here, I had a conversation with last week about her experience at a big game company, AAA game studio, and I felt like she wasn't mentored correctly. I said, I would, as a leader, when I'm a leader now, I know to give the exciting, fun tasks to young people, to give them successes and to give them opportunities to keep their morale high at work, to keep them productive. And the junk job, the tough stuff comes to me, or I find someone who can handle it, someone who can handle the tougher work, because I want everyone to be functioning, everyone to be doing well. Sometimes you got to take a thing off someone else's plate and give it to somebody else. That's not going to make you popular, but it's going to keep the whole shit moving forward. Everyone rowing their boats. It makes me think, a realization I had, it was in the Navy, in the military, the officers mess. They usually, on board the submarine, Smarter Every Day does a little video about Los Angeles class submarine and the galley that the crew eat at, and then the officers' quarters where the officers talk at. And having that officers club is important for giving a sense of camaraderie to those people at the top of a hierarchy. And they don't need it as often. I mean, that's part of the trade-off of leadership. You get paid a little bit more, but you're a little bit more isolated. You have more responsibility. So how do you get those people to get, what is the pressure release valve for them? Parallel or up. So you have to give them that same, like, maybe it's a magic number of 7 people that they can vent to. I found in my own life, my mother always talked about this. If I'm frustrated, talk to 3 people about it. I think that takes away about half the anxiety. By the time you talk to 7 people, you're probably feeling pretty chill about whatever happened to you. You realize that like 7 out of 10 people in your life probably aren't trying to kill you right now. Therefore, life ain't that bad. If you talk to 3 people about your problems and they're all like, I don't know, it sounds like you're at fault, then you know you really got to change yourself. But if you talk to 3 or 7 people about your problems and they're like, you're good, you're a cool person, you know, this is some strategies you can use to fix that situation, but it's not you particularly at fault, it's just the environment, then you will start to feel better about yourself. I think there's something in that magic number of 7. Maybe that's why it comes up on dice all the time. Maybe 5,000 years ago, Sun Tzu realized 7 direct reports is super important for everybody. Leadership, maybe you could just boil leadership down to delegation. Delegation, responsibility, respect, and let's all keep the project moving forward. I'm trying to be a leader for you guys today. I want to do work, and I'm trying to lead you into being productive and being sharing with this amazing medium we have, which is the internet. And the tools I have right here to stream to you guys are incredible. I think it's kept me sane and optimistic through the COVID lockdown. Now, thank goodness that COVID isn't as bad as we all thought it might have been in March, and we can go wear our masks, go outside. We're not as worried about touching. It's like you're not going to pick it up off the ground, especially if it's outside in the sunlight. UV light seems to be killing COVID pretty readily. I say open it all up, wear your masks, and as long as it's daylight, do your thing. Nighttime, maybe get some UV lights on. I would love a bar that has UV lights at the bar. You can get a tan, kills COVID, and you wear masks, and you have little sippy things, like you have little straws that come through the mask, and you can like sip. look, the Army's had sippy gas masks for 60 years, 70 years. I think we can have like gas masks with like oxygen tubes that go to little oxygen bottles that are flavored orange mandarin, lemongrass, whatever flavor you want, strawberry field, oxygen tubes. Everyone's feeling oxygenated. We're having a good time. UV light. I don't have a gazillion dollars to make that thing, but I think somebody should. Jonathan Mack says, great so far, Tom. Thanks, Jonathan. Ryan says, oh yeah, I saw that nuclear sub video. Really cool, isn't it, Ryan? Yeah, really, really cool. Where do we all go from here? I think we have to keep a level head. 10 years ago, I was 27 in a leadership position at Firaxis, and I was pretty hot-headed. I was very passionate about what we were doing, and I thought the most important thing was the project for the gamers. But looking back on it 10 years later, I wasn't mature enough to realize that other people realized it was more important that we're all on a boat and you got to stop rocking that boat. If the boat is rocking, we're not going to make our destination. Keeping level-headed is almost equally as important as delivering the product itself. Why is that? Well, in military terms, if you are locked into a philosophy of reaching a point and staying there and holding it, that can break, and then you're not left the ability to fall back on anything. Example, 1941, the Maginot Line in France. The Germans went around it. They broke through it. The hard defensible line between France and Germany was irrelevant within 3 weeks, and France collapsed. What's more important is the ability to adapt, to bend and not break. So if you're on that ship, to use that ship metaphor again, and you're going on some high seas and a freak wave comes through, maybe it's important that you do rock a little bit to navigate that wave and then to resettle and get back in again. But what if you're just a lighthouse? What if you're a fixed position, like one of these big oil rigs in the North Sea, and a big wave comes through, and that thing was designed very rigidly, very strong, not to move at all, to be inflexible? What happens when that wave comes in? Well, that thing's going to crumble and fall apart. If it was floating, maybe it can move, maybe it can adapt a little bit. Just back to the submarine reference. For some of you submariners out there, fans of submarines, how do you avoid the rocky waves on the surface? Well, you dive. I think being a submariner in management is a very special skill. People do it. They're able to go under leadership, under the turbulence of the day-to-day froth of communications and drama and politics and all that, and see a long-range strategic target, and they're just bypassing the frequency, the waves, the craziness on the surface, and they're going right to the objective until they're parked right next to it and ready to jump in when the thing's available. That's what I want you guys to think about today. Leadership, long-term leadership, is more like driving that sub boat. It's more like being a hunter in the wild, being patient, reading the tea leaves, reading the waves, seeing which way the wind is going, have this vision for the future. So what do I want to do? I want to think about the next 3 months. Let's say the next 6 months, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't think we're going to have an effective vaccine for 6 months. I want you all to think about, for the next 6 months, putting together your long-term plan. What have you learned in the last 10 years? Where do you want to be in the next 10 years? There's a lot of good things that have happened in the last 10 years. There's communication, for example. I put money in the stock market 10 years ago, and back then it was very frustrating, but now there's enough money there that I can survive off of it for a little while at least. Their long-term investments do pay out. Whatever you invest in, you will get more and more return of over the course of the time in general. But it's good to be flexible. It's good to pivot. Young people, I think, are better at pivoting. You're more agile. You've got those young, spry tendons and muscles, and you're not carrying a lot of baggage. So you can move, you can pivot, you can react to what is all out there. However, older people have deeper roots and have a deeper understanding of the deeper, bigger waves. And maybe they can sense when a tsunami is coming, because the tsunami comes deep in the ocean. It isn't exposed at the surface. So the deeper your roots are, maybe you feel that earthquake first. Maybe you notice that tsunami coming first. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is having these deep roots, a large sensor network, so that you can expect a lot of things. But it's harder to pivot. If you're a big tree with deep roots, how hard is it to pull your roots out of the ground and be transported to be somewhere else? That becomes a lot harder. Maybe you got to lean on other trees to help you out for a while. You got to lean on your friends. So that's some thoughts I have about leadership. What's Tom going to be doing today? I'm going to be drawing. We're working on sniper drawing. Let's load that up. Very fun. I lost a little bit of work on this from a saving mistake, but my challenge on this drawing today is to tighten up the details on the rifle, on the sniper. Blurry but clear foreground, grassy elements, and then trying to really make this clear. Right now there's a little too much camouflage between the sniper and the background, and I want to think about distinguishing that a little bit. Thanks for all the feedback from my friends out there who have given me some feedback. Love some feedback. I think that's a good tip too. So one specific lesson from 10 years ago about leadership is I got into trouble by questioning decisions that the project lead. I had been a leader in a position at this company. I was pulled from leadership and someone else was put in, more senior was put in charge of the project. I feel like I was scapegoated a little bit, but let's just take for this example that the decision of the corporation was correct, that I was too immature for the position, which was right, and that this other leader should have taken this. Because I came from that leadership position, I was used to questioning the authority, or at least making my own decisions. And in a public meeting, I questioned the decision making of that leader, eroding that leader's sense of leadership over the whole team. What I should have done is had that privately. I should have griped it privately, not publicly, if I wanted the boat not to be rocked a lot of things. So if you're a manager, you got to tell your people morale is important. Rocking the boat is an important thing. Bringing truth to power is necessary, and before you go public, before you go group, you should do it privately first, just to not ruffle people's feathers, because you never know when you might be working for them again. You never know when you might run into them at a party. You don't want to upset people. Respect and delegate, I think, is really what you want to do. Read a couple books on leadership. If you guys don't have any leadership tips, tricks, let me know. Write them in the comments. Send me a private message. Would love to keep this conversation going. When I was younger, I went to the Youth Leadership Conference in Connecticut, and we had two events I went to. One was in Stamford, and one was, I think, was in Wilton. And I got to meet General Colin Powell at the one in Stamford. That was pretty cool. I got to shake General Colin Powell's hand. Not a lot of leaders out there. Probably 1 in 7 is a leader. Back to the magic number of 7. It's not that the universe chose you. It's that you looked around and you saw that there was a gap. And someone needed to fill that gap. A door is open. Someone needs to get up, close the door, and stop the locusts from coming inside. You might expose yourself to a lot of those locusts as you get up and you close that door, but you're saving the household and you should feel good about that. Find other leaders. Find peers at your level that you can talk with and share methods, optimism, observations, that kinds of things. All right. I'm getting a little dry in the throat, so that's the universe telling me enough leadership from Tom today. I'm going to go draw. I'm going to go listen to some veterans talk about leadership myself. I think Jocko Willing's great, Andy Stump, Chuck Pressburg, Tim Kennedy, veteran warriors talking about leadership. Listen to Richard Davis Hanson talk about leadership and generalship. I think that's very interesting. Hope you guys have a great week. The market's down. Oh, Bethesda bought by Microsoft, $7.5 billion. I need to research some news on that, and I'll get back to you, all you guys, about it. But right now, what I'm expecting, and I think this is public, is, look, Bethesda is one of Steam's big money makers. It was Bethesda and 2K are the big publishers that still publish through Steam. I don't know why Take-Two 2K doesn't have their own distribution service yet. They're giving Steam, Valve 30% of everything they make. 30% of every copy of Civilization 5 went to Gabe Newell. I mean, we love Gabe Newell. I love Gabe Newell. I love me some Half-Life. I love Valve. But other companies like EA and Ubisoft, maybe, I mean, other Blizzard for sure have their own digital distribution services where they're getting 100% of their revenue. Epic has the game store. They're getting 100% of their revenue, and they have discretionary money now to spend on other people, giving other people deals and exclusive deals. It's all about that cheddar. It's all about that coin. Now we see Bethesda, who was a big staple on Steam, going to Microsoft because Microsoft wants that digital distribution platform. They don't have a good one, but they have like Xbox now. They're trying to develop. They're trying to compete with Sony, Nintendo. I think this is what's happening. Microsoft has been sitting on a lot of cash, a lot of cash. This is a good buy for them, and some people at Bethesda ZeniMax got paid, got rich. I would expect I'm hoping for the quality of Bethesda games to go up because my beef with Bethesda games is not that they're creative and interesting, it's that they're buggy and they break computers. So Microsoft, a little bit more on top of whether their products break computers or not. Yeah, Microsoft Windows is buggy. Yeah, their user interface isn't a whole lot of fun. So maybe these two groups can talk about how bad their user interfaces are. So that's the challenge. It's going to be like getting some kind of good user interface czar over at Microsoft to make this better. Because if you think Microsoft Flight Simulator is a good user interface, well, that's a whole college education how to fly airplanes. So uh, I'm excited. I applaud those leaders over at Bethesda and ZeniMax who had a vision to create a $100 million, $300 million, now $7.5 million game empire who stuck with it, and now they're getting paid, and I hope it benefits all the employees, and I'm hoping we get better games out of this down the road. But be patient. I think it's going to take a while before they come to us. So maybe that's cool. Maybe 2021 we have some awesome Xbox titles. Maybe we have some awesome PC titles. I would love for Microsoft to have a good gaming platform. In the meantime, I'm going to be playing Steam. I love me some Steam. I'm a big fan of Steam games right now. Playing Control. All right, that's all I got for you guys. Feel free to send me messages. I'm going to be doing a talk for Micah on Wednesday, Intro to 3D program. Very excited about that. And then I'm just going to be drawing for a little bit. Got some projects coming up, and we're going to be having a positive week. Thanks again. Take care.